Ooh. Hey, what's going on, guys? Tony C. Davis here, the Tony C. Davis Show, where we share faith, family, fitness, finance, fun, and anything in between. And today I have a very special guest, the coach of coaches, Metacognition Maven. And brother, I have to tell you, I had to look that up. The one and only Mr. Grayson Marshall. How you doing, sir?
I'm awesome, buddy. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate the
Hey.
opportunity to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you, man, for having the opportunity to talk to you guys. Grayson and I met through a men's group, three times the man, which was actually started by a good friend of ours, Joseph B. Washington. And I will be honest with you, Grayson. I'll let you share a little bit about yourself. But as I start to listen to you and learn from the things and some of the thought processes, I have to be very careful of how I think and express what I think, because I'm like, this guy, he's going to break down my thought process. So again, guys, this is Mr. Grayson Marshall. Grayson, go ahead and introduce yourselves to our audience.
Tony, I appreciate it. I'm hail from Washington, D.C., born and raised there. The son of educators. My mother was a principal. My dad was a teacher, so education was non-negotiable in my house. I have one sister. She's 18 months younger than me. She actually graduated from the University of Pennsylvania, Wharton School of Business, #2 business school in the country. So education was something that was, again, something we had to have. Accepted a scholarship to Clemson University. Was fortunate enough to have a successful career there. I graduated to all-time ACC career assist leader. I still hold 13 collegiate records. I was inducted into Hall of Fame 2009 and ACC Legend 2016. And I was homeless at 27. So literally taking everything that I had learned in academia and realized, Tony, that it does not transition evenly into the world. So I literally had to reframe everything that I thought, and that's where metacognition came in. By definition, it means the understanding and awareness of how you think.
Yeah.
And it was that transition that made the biggest jumps. Because the Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. But the heart of a man is desperately wicked. And part of our accepted behavior is to embrace negativity, to embrace what we can't have, embrace what we can't do, is what we're told. We're told about limit after limit after limit. And that's not the God we serve. So I had to really reframe my mindset about that. What can I have? I can have anything I want, but I have to think about it, understanding it the right way. And when I realized, Tony, there were so many things that I just did from a acceptance standpoint, so many comments that I made, so many responses that I gave that were just what I accepted as normal. When I started really processing, I'm like, why did I just say that? Because I began to understand the power of creativity. And if I'm made in the image and likeness of God, what I say creates. And what comes out of my mouth, it's what I have in my life. And so many people, Tony, you mentioned this one day we were on. You said people pray for a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff you pray for, you can fix. And those are things I'm talking about. You can fix what comes out your mouth. Half of what's harnessing you is what you are heaping out of your mouth. And we don't realize it. We don't understand it. So I think that was why I kind of transitioned into this place. It's been successful for me. And it's funny. I think the biggest compliment is what you said. Now I have people aware of what they are saying and what they are thinking. And now they are more intentional about what they do. And it's going to produce greater results, because when that intentionality becomes second nature in your subconscious, it's like you're working in a whole different sphere of life.
Because, and I'm sure you know this, a lot of things that we learn from people who have great intentions for us, but they also learn from people who had great intentions for them. But those intentions didn't always push us to our greatest abilities, and would oftentimes become habit. And then we pass the habit down to the next generation. But something I want to touch on, because you just glossed over it. I sense that you're a humble guy. But I want to go back to your college days, and you may not want to talk a lot about that. But if I'm not mistaken, 857 assists. At least that's because I did a little research. And an ACC legend. How was it? I know you said your parents pushed you to education, but how did your formal education prepare you for this world that you're in now?
I think Tony was a discipline. I think that my whole purpose was to get a scholarship so my parents wouldn't have to pay for school. That was the only reason I wanted one. So aspirations beyond that were nothing of importance to me. There was nothing. I was not driven to play pro basketball. I was not driven to be all American. I wasn't driven to be an ACC legend. I just wasn't. I wanted to go to school for free because I bought into my education would do what it needed to do for me. So I said, let me go ahead and get that. Because here's the deal, Tony. I literally took professional athletes as people who couldn't transition. I felt like people who lumped their whole lives into sports was because they couldn't do anything else. I said, I'm not going to be that guy. I'm not going to be that guy, which was a double-edged sword for me because what I did not do was become intentional about the opportunity I had. See, if I had realized the platform that sports could provide for me, I would have pursued that platform because the things that I do now would have been of greater magnitude because of what I would have accomplished. On the other side of it, I put all of this energy and effort into education and found out that when I got out here, that degree didn't mean as much as I thought it would. What I thought that degree would open for me didn't because of what I wanted to dream. So now I want to give people a balanced understanding. You need education. Let's not get it twisted. But formal education that they teach you in school, if it's not supplemented, Tony, you're going to find yourself average because the education system is set up to create employees. It's not created for excellence. It's not created for superior. It's created for you to accept the limits that they impose on you. I want to make sure it wasn't until 1909 at the Chicago School of Divinity that the first major was even accepted. Up until then, you got a college education. But when they started compartmentalizing you into majors, what they began to do is allow you to embrace limits on your own. So if I pick this career, this is the limit I can have. If I pick this career, this is the limit I have. So what they did was they limited you, and it was by your choice. So you don't find anything offensive about it because it's the career path you chose. We've heard those commentaries before. What career path are you choosing? And it's lined with limits. That's just the way it is.
And we talked, on the call this morning, we mentioned a bit about education because I believe in education. You believe in education. But, our education, as you said, it doesn't necessarily prepare us for the real world. I know guys that, spent a lot of years trying to make it. And I'm, again, not knocking education. I know got a lot of guys who spent a lot of time in calculus, geometry, and all that stuff. But they're not engineers. They're not, they're not doctors. They're not. And so when they get out here, yeah, me too, man. When they get out here in the real world, and then if you get a degree, not knocking the degrees, you have guys people who are hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt and can't get a job in the field that they're indebted for.
Correct.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So that being said, you said you were homeless at 29 or 27?
27. Mm-hmm.
After all that education.
Mm-hmm. And here's the deal, Tony. When I realized that what I had learned didn't transition, I had to go learn something new. And here's what I did. I learned it without direction. I learned without a coach. I learned without somebody that bounced it off of because my parents weren't where I could go. They didn't have expertise in area business or small business or even the mindset of an entrepreneur. They were employees. I love them, but that's all they were going to be. I can't get that information from them. So I began to pursue this on my own. And my first mentors were in books. My first mentors were guys like Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich, the 16 Laws of Success. Those became my first mentors. Then I began to listen to quote unquote motivational speakers with some substance. Jim Rohn, Les Brown. Those are the guys that I had in my head every single day because I had Zig Ziglar. I mean, those were guys that I really began to get a new appreciation for this thing. What are you saying? What are you speaking? And then I began to balance that with the Bible because I was born and raised Catholic. So church wasn't where I went to, you know what I mean? I knew.
I hate to cut you off, but I don't want to lose this, man, because you said something there. We both are believers. Mm-hmm. But that being said, because when you mentioned Jim Rohn, Robert Kiyosaki, from my circle, when you start talking about motivational speakers and things of that nature, it's almost like a curse word. It's almost like you're slapping God in his face. So where do you think the church has failed in that area?
I'll go right to 1 Corinthians 15:46. First natural, then spiritual. We become so spiritual with no earthly good. And I know that exegetical passage of scripture is talking about the first Adam and the second Adam. So I do know my Bible. However, there is a rhema. There's a present day truth to that. And we don't know how these things work. Dr. Caroline Leaf. There's some more folks out there that really say, here's how the brain works. We don't even know how to operate our own system. We don't even know how our tools work. And the reality is we have failed folks in not telling them how to go and actually apply things every day. We taught them to get notebooks. We taught them how to shout, run around church. We taught them how to be obedient, get into ministry. We haven't taught them how to go do ministry. Look, here's the bottom line. If I'm not teaching you to go out and do this better than me, I'm not doing you this. I'm doing you a disservice. If I'm not teaching you to be greater than me, Jesus even said, greater works than these shall you do, because I go to be with my Father. If the greatest model and leader of all time said, hold on, here's what I'm doing, but what I'm giving you, if you use it to its max, you should do greater works than these. He was raising folk from the dead. He was giving recovery sight to the blind. He was making a lame walk. And I got to be honest, I don't believe that power at a level of belief still exists the way that it should, but it's inside the kingdom. But I did, Tony. I found folks outside the kingdom. They got faith for everything. They don't worry about nothing. I mean, they absolutely, and they're quote unquote, I use this other term, they're manifesting the life that they want, because that's another word that people get, universe and manifest. Boy, they scare folk that are deeply religious. Yeah. I can't get in that. I've got to figure out what applies. But again, I've always balanced it with my Bible. So if I go hear that stuff, I've got to balance it. And what I found, Tony, almost every last bit of it is based on biblical principles.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They just found a way to apply it. That's all.
Yeah. I've known speakers, and one particular speaker, I won't call his name, but he uses scripture throughout his speeches, but never gives credit or calls Jesus or talks about God, talks about a higher power or a particular person, but he never acknowledges who God is and who Jesus is. But again, they are using biblical principles to advance in the areas that they have chosen. Now, I believe it was you said this morning, the unbeliever oftentimes has more faith than the believer. Can you elaborate on that?
Because they have no object of faith. See, here's the deal. We have to have a relationship with what we and who we trust. Like I said this morning, we've reduced God to man. So we don't trust God like we don't trust man. They have nobody to trust. So they just going on it. And it's biblical, because God says without faith, it's impossible to please God. There is no prerequisite for who has it. It doesn't say if you're a Christian. It doesn't say if you're a Baptist. It doesn't say if you're church God. It says it without faith. And if all souls are mine, said the Lord, that's saved and unsaved, sanctified, unsanctified. If you have faith, then I got to honor that. See, God can't pick and choose. Well, I'm only going to have faith if they believe in me. No, that's not what he said. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. And folks that do not have an object of faith have unwavering faith. That was part of the problem with the Christian world. They were like, well, you don't have faith in something. Well, and then I've heard them say, you can't have faith in your faith. Well, I'm going to tell you something. At some level, folks that just have unmitigating faith, they just believe it's going to happen no matter what. And they're not praying to a God. They're not doing it. It seems to show up.
It's sad that, many people who are not believers, they have faith in themselves, not knowing that God gives them that ability, but they have so much faith in themselves that they don't let anything hinder them from doing and reaching the accomplishments that they have set forth. And so again, as you mentioned, faith is the substance of things hoped for. We know that, and the evidence of things not seen. It doesn't say you have to be a believer to have faith.
Hey, here's the thing, Tony. Folks that come from church and religious backgrounds are told what they can't do. People who don't come from that background don't believe what they can't do. They can do anything. See, we have in the essence of serving God accepted limits. Those folks don't even have no limits. What you mean I can't do that? Watch me. I'm going to go do it. But we have to balance what we decide we're going to do on what we've been told we can't do.
Exactly.
Or what's not godly, or what's not of God. All that we got to balance when we go do something. They don't have that balance. They don't have that restriction. They don't have that hinder. They don't have that hesitation. They just go do it.
I caught a little flack several years ago when I said something to the effect, a person that has no vision does not have the right to judge my vision. And and what I'm kind of referring to is that oftentimes when you reach a point in your life, although you've been raised in the church, and again, this is not a knock on church, believe me, I'm a
Correct.
pastor. This is not a knock on church, but if you've been raised a certain way and you start to deviate from what you've been taught and start to tap into new revelation, oftentimes you'll catch a little flack. Have you received any backlash from the I guess the new revelation you received about the possibilities? And it may have been years ago, but
Yeah, no, Tony, and you still get it, because what happens is that when you become more convicted about where you're living and you have the fruit to show of it, now it's indisputable.
yeah,
Now it becomes a personal thing. Now it becomes a challenging thing. They won't openly articulate because they don't have any Bible to back it up. I'm going to use my Bible to support what I'm doing. You don't have any Bible to contradict what I'm doing, because I'm going to balance it with my Bible.
yeah,
So whereas people who don't want to honor God, I'm going to honor God. So every aspect of this biblical principle, I'm going to attribute it to God himself. So there's no way there's no argument here when it comes to that. The difference is you're not applying it. You've allowed restrictions to hold you back, and that's your own personal stuff. That's the other thing, Tony, that I've gotten to a place, and I admire you, and I love listening to you. It's the simplicity of my own life.
yeah.
I don't have to answer to you. I love you, but I do not have to answer to you. And once you get free of that commitment, once you get free of that stronghold, it's a whole different place. And the frustration, Tony, even with you, is their frustration that they can't be that free.
Yeah, I had to get free of other people's opinion of me,
Mm-hmm.
because when you're trying to please people and their idea of how I should live, it keeps. I could go.
Oh.
Okay, we clicked out for just a second. I could go on and on about this, but I don't want to get in trouble because I'll get some emails and who do you think you are? But anyway, again, I want to appreciate Bob, our buddy Bob, for coming in. Bob Hughes from 3 Times the Man. Appreciate you, Bob, for joining us. But I want to talk a little bit more about you and what you're doing. You're in Dallas right now. What's going on?
I'm in Dallas with a product that I have called the Phoenix Sterilase System. It is a non-invasive laser that allows me to bring healing in a natural way, literally regenerate cells and the cell structure. So literally what we've been able to do in the past, Tony, is use medication, use some different ways of trying to heal the body, ice, all those things. And again, I'm not saying those shouldn't be used, but what the laser allows me to do is actually operate in God's principles. Mm-hmm. God's principles of distribution of energy comes from the sun, and his distribution allows the sun to infuse energy or stimulate the mitochondria, which then produces ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Well, what we've done is we've just recreated that same model in a natural state. We've literally taken a photon energy and put it in a place where they didn't believe light could go, at 1275 nanometers. And at this 1275 nanometers is actually the open door that allows me to literally fix what's wrong with somebody. And the myriad of verticals is so long. I can do things, Tony, from TBI, traumatic brain injury. I can work with concussions. I can work with COPD. I can work with MS. We work with MD Anderson with cancer, getting people off of the pain medication. Any sort of orthopedic challenges there, muscle tension, anything with diabetes. I can deal with neuropathy. I can deal with just about anything because I'm dealing with it all naturally. So for somebody who is about natural healing, who wants to serve God as much as I can, I now have a way to serve God. I have a way to literally use his philosophy about healing, energy, growth, and maintenance. And I get to bring it to people. So we're here. Matter of fact, Tim Brown, the Heisman Trophy winner and NFL Hall of Fame inductee, is about to walk in. We've been treating his son here. So I get a chance to meet him for the first time. What an honor that'll be. And I love being in this space. I get a chance to really talk to people. And the biggest thing, Tony, is I get to talk to them about the Lord. I get to really share that my heart for things is about nothing but God.
And I'm sure just talking to you in the time that I've known you, I'm sure you are a man of integrity. And with this particular product or service that you offer, are these some of the skill sets that you learned as an entrepreneur, as a a college student? Where did you learn about this particular technology?
The one thing I've learned about business, Tony, is I've learned to pivot. That's the one thing I've learned throughout my career. The one thing I've learned is, what does an opportunity look like? People don't know what opportunities look like. And opportunities aren't missed. They're just passed on to somebody else. Because I stay true to people, loving on people, and keep the theme of who I am consistent, people come to me and they look at the skill set that I have and the ability that I have, the way that people have, and say, you need to meet this guy. I ended up meeting Gary Bellinger, who was the innovator and the designer of this. And literally, he's a former general contractor who started messing around with creating lasers. He just did it on a humbug. I got something to do. He met a doctor who said, you should get into this field. He said, forget it. I'm getting in. I'll try it. And 15, 20 years later, here's where we are. So the opportunity came to me. I see opportunities for what they are in God's timing. We're living in a world, Tony, that health is a major issue for so many people. You and I stay healthy. Love watching you stay in shape. And it's amazing to watch guys that are getting up, quote unquote, in age that don't look their age. But I can now deal with, especially people of color. My laser doesn't recognize color because of the 1275 nanometers. So the world is out there dealing with neuropathy. The world is dealing with some other debilitating issues for people of color. I get a chance to treat those people in a healthy way because this technology, cold laser treatment, is detrimental to people of color because when you put it on their skin, it literally burns their skin. So now we can utilize something that's amazing for people, and it can be used with everybody. And I'm just fortunate enough for God to have opened that door. So many people found the pandemic disheartening and frustrating. It was nothing but motivating and counter-driven for me. So there's more to what he's doing. I'm down here in Dallas the next couple of days. I got an offer tomorrow to close the deal to go to Africa and take this laser over there. So a person of color going over to treat people of color is going to be an amazing, amazing thing. So I'm just excited about it, Tony. I just stay open and I never limit God so I don't limit me.
And again, I just want to take a moment to say hello to our guest, to my wife is on, Zetas, Elizabeth Smith, again, Bob, and looks like Marty Ray. Appreciate you all for joining us for this broadcast. Listen, man, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you're busy there in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
One
Yes,
more
sir.
thing, you are called, again, the coach of coaches. We mentioned earlier about being able to transition from a sports figure to, let me say, real life. I know
Mm-hmm.
sports is real life, but you know what I mean. Once to a certain point in life, you can't do the things you would normally do, and a lot of guys
Right.
find it quite difficult when they're not able to jump as high or run as fast. How can you help guys who are possibly my age want to be able to be impactful and still have some significance?
Tony, the one muscle that we don't do enough work is the mind. And that's where I find I spend more time with people in transition is their mental place, their mental approach, how they see things. What are they thinking? Have they taken the limits off? What is their current conversation with themselves? Those are the biggest things. So I find myself working with former CEOs, people retiring from the military, people getting out of sports. You mentioned the significant downside of life after sports. The NFL statistics state this, that 90% of pro football players 2 years removed from the sport have been through a bankruptcy, divorce, or they're in prison. So for me, what I get a chance to do here, Tony, is spend some time with people, getting them to fix the way that they think. And that's the biggest thing. So if I can exercise that muscle as a man thinketh in his heart, so as he get the thoughts going in the right direction, and the rest of it will follow. Everything that you do is about mind over matter. It's about my thinking. You push yourself to be healthy. That's a mental thing. The body follows. As the mind goes, the body follows. The mind and mouth have to match. And what I focus on and working with people is that direct correlation. The synergy in the mind and the mouth are going to give you everything that you want in life. It's never too late. There's always a chance. If you're still breathing, then you still have the amazing potential that God gave you. So let's make sure that that's the emphasis. So when people come to me, I make it clear about what I'm going to give you. This isn't magic fairy dust. This is rooted in biblical scripture This isn't Bible, but I'm going to make sure you're held accountable to execute it in your life and to become everything that you were destined to be. That phone that you have has apps on it that are unused. It has a capacity that we haven't tapped into. You as an individual have a capacity that you have never tapped into. And it takes leaders like yourself, myself, Bob Hughes, other folks out here, the men at 3 times the man, to really get to people and say, look, it's not about anything more than you being the best you. If you're going to be better than you were when I met you, then I've done my job. And that's why I believe, Tony, I'm continuing to do the things that I want to do. And you are a pastor. It's one of the reasons I would never take that title, because the things that you can't say, I want to be able to say. The things that systems and circumstances may hold you back from saying, I don't ever want them restrictions. Tony, one of the things that I say when I go speak, when I introduce myself to an audience, I'll tell them my name, I'll tell them who I am, and I said I'm here for one reason and one reason only, and that's not to be asked back. I say that before I speak every time. It's not to be asked back.
Well, one thing about me, I've been known to rub people the wrong way. I mean, if I have to coddle you and cuddle you to make you better, I'm not doing my job. Every now and then it takes that
Exactly.
tough love, as we say. I don't ever say anything to offend anyone, but truth hurts sometimes. And to get people out of their comfort zone, sometimes you have to hurt their feelings, not with the intention of hurting, but to show them who they really are. And with that being said, Jesus, I'm sure you know this, many of the people that followed Jesus didn't follow him because he was the Son of God. They followed him when he met a need. When he met that
Correct.
need, because we can preach to people, we can pray for people, and all those things. I mentioned yesterday, of course, being Easter Sunday. Although many Christians around the world are celebrating Easter or whatever, there are people who are living some difficult lives. Things are happening on Easter. They could care less about Easter. They could care less about Thanksgiving. They could care less about Christmas, because they have situations that need to be dealt with. And as believers, we should be able to do our very best to not be so, as you mentioned, holy until we're not any good earthly, no heavenly minded till we're so earthly beneficial. So with that being said, man, any final words? I hated to run through this, but I knew we had to reschedule a couple of times, and you're a very busy man. I appreciate you greatly. What else would you like to share with our viewers before we? My wife says Tony doesn't hold back. Yes, she knows. Sometimes she.
I want to be politically correct on your show, Tony. I know who watches. I got to be ready. I got to make sure they're ready to show.
My wife,
I
was going to say, my wife, she has to remind me not to be so abrasive sometimes.
I think if I want to leave people with anything, Tony, is that over the last few months, I think we've come to an understanding of who you are as a person of Christ, who you are, who you love. And I think that in order for us to move forward, we have to be able to decide that that's where we're going to live. I think this whole pandemic thing really made people, whether they wanted to or not, choose sides. Nobody threw the baby out with the bathwater, but there were some folks that got exposed during this time. And at the end of the day, I think for me, it allowed me to see who was on the team and who was on the team. And I think if you're really going to pursue God and pursue Christ, then you need to do it unashamedly. I think you need to do it by way of love and not hate. And you truly have to decide that people are more important, not color. Color can't be more important than Christ. It just can't be. And I think that those are things that and it challenged some people. It challenged a whole bunch of people who claim to be Christians. And that's why I said, I think it separated wheat from the tare a little bit. It really found out who had faith and who didn't, who really, really trusted God and who didn't. And I think it was a maturing time for a lot of people. But it shouldn't be a time of frustration or quit. It should be a time of reassessment and reevaluation, a new level of accountability. How do you want to move forward? Assess yourself a new tribe, find some new folks that line up with where you're going, and go and do that. Because now there's no unashamed way to live this thing out. We're living in a time where there is no clear-cut path to what makes sense. is what folks emotionally want to do. And I think you can really stand out for Christ right now. I think if there's never ever been a time before that you really stand on your principles and stand for what you believe, it is now, because you have a whole group of people society-wise that have fallen into a narrative, that have accepted limits. And if you want to show that you serve a God with no limits, there's no better time than now.
Well, I know I said I wanted to let you go, but you just said something, man. You can stand on we can stand on our principles and our faith and what we believe without being hateful.
Correct.
You know, we can say things in love, mean what we say, but we don't have to be hateful, because that's not demonstrating the love of Christ.
No, and I think as I said, Tony, it was a real time to see that people were claiming to be true to God and were just as mean, divisive, full of division, and full of hate as anybody else. And I said, that's why I'm able to see now. I'm able to see both sides. And I said, look, I'm gonna do this love thing. Now, y'all can be on the fringe whatever you want to, believe in man, what do you believe in God? If I mess this thing up believing in God, I'm gonna go down that way. I'm just okay with that. I'm okay with going down that way.
Well, again, my friend, I really do appreciate your time. Listen, tell our viewers, you know, where they can find out more about the Metacognition Maven, the coach of coaches, Mr. Grayson.
They can go.
Leave
sir. They can go to the realgm.live. Real simple. The realgm.live. The realgm.live.
realgm.live. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and leave us something positive to go out of here on. And what I'm going to do is, again, to all of you who have some great content to share, reach out to me at thetttshow@gmail.com. I'd love to share your story. And again, reach out to Grayson. I know he can help you in those areas where you may be struggling. So, Grayson, take us out of here with something positive, my friend.
Today I'll touch 1,000 lives before the day is done. Leave countless marks of goods and ill ere set the evening sun. This is my wish, I always wish, my prayer I always pray. Lord, let my life touch 1,000 lives before I'm called away. I negotiated with life for a penny, and I found out to my dismay that whatever wage I would have asked life for, life would surely have paid. There once was a very cautious man who never laughed or played. He never tried, he never took a risk, he never sang or prayed. And then one day that man, he died. His life insurance was denied. Because they said he never lived, they claimed he never died. The reality of it is you only have one chance at this thing, Tony. You either get it right or you live to regret it. I'm the real GM, Grayson Marshall Jr. I am the Metacognition Maven. I'm the guy to get you to believe in you.
Hey, again, guys, this is Grayson. Tony here signing out. Thank you for joining us. Spread the word. Let's help people become a better person. God bless you, Grayson.
Thank you, sir. Love you, man. Appreciate the time. You got it.